I was standing in the boarding line when my mother's text arrived, slicing through the noise of the terminal. "Don't come. Only elites are invited." I read the words twice. Sure, I had misunderstood. For years, I had ghost-written their toasts and curated their wardrobe, polishing them until they shined. But now, 60 minutes before my flight to the gala, I helped design. I realized I wasn't just being uninvited. I was being erased. The text message arrived exactly 60 minutes before my flight was scheduled to board. I was standing in line at the coffee kiosk in Terminal 4, watching the barista foam milk for a latte I did not actually want, when my phone buzzed against my palm. It was my mother, Marla. The preview on the lock screen was short enough to read in a single glance, but my brain refused to process the syntax. It felt like reading a foreign language where I knew the words but could not make sense of the sentence. "Don't come. Only elites are invited." I stared at the screen. The barista called my order, but I did not move. I swiped the notification open, waiting for the punchline. The follow-up text that would say, "Just kidding," or "Autocorrect is crazy today." My mother was many things: anxious, image-obsessed, prone to dramatic flares of insecurity, but she was not cruel. At least, I had never thought of her as cruel. A second bubble appeared. This one was from my father. "Grant, please respect our wishes tonight." The coffee cup felt scalding hot as I finally took it from the counter. I walked mechanically to a set of vinyl chairs near the gate and sat down, placing my carry-on bag between my feet as if it were an anchor keeping me from floating away. Only elites are invited. The word elite sat there, glowing in the blue light of the screen. It was not a word my mother used naturally. It was a word she had adopted, like a stray cat she was trying to train. About 3 years ago, before that, rich people were snobs or lucky. Now they were elites, and apparently, I was not one of them. I was 33 years old. I was a marketing strategist with a client list that included 2 national tech firms and a sustainable clothing brand. I had paid off my own student loans. I had bought my own condo in Chicago, and for the last 5 years, I had quietly, invisibly, managed the public image of the Wood family, polishing my parents' rough edges until they looked like the philanthropists they so desperately wanted to be. I typed a reply, my thumbs hovering. "I am at the airport. My flight leaves in an hour. What is going on?" I watched the 3 little dots of the typing indicator appear. They danced for a long time. Then they vanished. No reply. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe there was a seating issue. The gala was high profile. Perhaps the most high-profile event Briarhaven had seen in a decade. Maybe a fire marshal had cut the capacity. Maybe there was some specific, high-stakes drama with the table arrangements that Marla was trying to shield me from. I opened the browser on my phone and navigated to the gala's digital invitation page. I had helped design the template 6 months ago, ensuring the font, a clean, modern serif, conveyed sophisticated elegance rather than new money loudness. I scrolled down to the section titled, "Our Host Family," yesterday. My photo had been there. It was a professional headshot, placed nicely between my brother Owen's picture and my parents' joint portrait. Underneath my name, it had read, Kennedy Wood, Strategic Advisor. Now, the space was gone. The layout had been adjusted. My parents' photo was larger, centered. Owen was still there, listed as Junior Committee Chair, but I had been scrubbed from the code. It was not a glitch. The spacing was too perfect. Someone had gone into the back end of the website and removed me, realigning the margins so that no one would ever know I had been part of the structure. I felt a cold, hollow sensation in my chest, distinct from anger. It was the feeling of realizing you are standing on a trapdoor that has already been unlatched. I should have gone home. I should have turned around, called an Uber, and gone back to my apartment to drink wine and stare at the wall. But the ticket was non-refundable. And more importantly, my confusion was rapidly hardening into a cold, sharp curiosity. I boarded the plane. The flight to Briarhaven was short, less than 90 minutes, but it gave me enough time to spiral and then pull myself back together. I connected to the spotty in-flight wireless and refreshed the gala page again, hoping it had been a mistake. It had not. I pulled up my messaging app and found Tessa Lang's name. Tessa was one of the few friends I had kept from college who understood the specific insanity of the nonprofit world. She managed events for a large hospital foundation in Boston, and she had an unfailing radar for bullshit. "Hey," I typed. "Weird question. What do you know about Harbor Light Futures? The org my parents are supporting tonight." Tessa's reply came through 10 minutes later, just as the captain turned on the fasten seatbelt sign for turbulence. "The rebranding is aggressive." She wrote, "I have been looking at their press releases since you mentioned the GALA last week. It does not match how legitimate nonprofits usually operate. Kennedy." They shifted from direct aid, food pantries, shelter support, to strategic empowerment initiatives in like 6 months. That usually means they stopped buying soup and started paying consultants. I stared at the words, strategic empowerment. It was the kind of buzzword salad I saw in corporate boardrooms, not in the brochures of charities that were supposed to be helping struggling families in the Rust Belt. "Anything else?" I asked. "The board is new," Tessa replied, "almost entirely replaced in the last year. And the donor tiers for tonight are astronomical. I saw the sponsorship deck. Since when do your parents run in circles that drop 50 grand on a dinner table? Since they decided they were better than everyone else." I thought, but I did not type it. I closed my eyes and leaned my head against the plastic window shade. Below me, the clouds were breaking, revealing the gray-green grid of the Midwest. It had not always been like this. That was the tragedy of it. 5 years ago, Grant and Marla Wood were the owners of a successful chain of hardware supply stores. They were loud, funny, and unpretentious. My father wore cargo shorts to nice dinners, and my mother's idea of a fancy night out was the Italian chain restaurant by the mall, where they served unlimited breadsticks. They were happy. We were happy. Then came the buyout. A national conglomerate acquired the supply chain for a number that had too many zeros for my parents to comprehend. The money did not ruin them immediately. It was the insecurity that followed the money. It started with the country club. I remembered the day Marla came home in tears because a woman at the tennis courts had made a snide comment about her leggings. They were from a department store, not the boutique pro shop. "We have to fit in, Kennedy," she had told me, her eyes wide and panicked. "We can't look like we stumbled in the back door." I had wanted to help. That was my sin. I used my knowledge of branding and aesthetics to guide them. I took Marla shopping. I taught Grant which suit cut made him look distinguished rather than boxed in. I edited their Facebook captions to remove the excessive exclamation points and the political rants that would alienate their new neighbors. I thought I was protecting them. I thought I was giving them armor, but the armor had fused to their skin. The new friend group, the Meridian Table. They called themselves spoken-coded compliments. "You look so healthy" meant you had gained weight. "He's so spirited" meant someone was drunk. "She's very authentic" meant she was poor. My parents learned the code faster than I expected. They stopped laughing with their mouths open. They stopped telling the story about how they met at a demolition derby, and slowly, they started treating me less like a daughter and more like a staff member who was not performing up to quota. My phone buzzed again as the wheels touched the tarmac. It was my brother, Owen. I waited until we were taxiing to the gate to answer. "Are you here?" Owen asked. His voice sounded tight, breathless. "I just landed," I said. "Did you know?" There was a pause on the other end. The background noise sounded like a cavernous room, echoing footsteps, the clatter of silverware. He was at the venue. "I didn't know they were going to text you," Owen said. "I swear, I thought you were just coming late." "Mom said only elites are invited," I said, keeping my voice flat. "Is that the new tagline?" "She's just stressed. Ken, you know how she gets." "No, Owen, I know how she used to get. She used to get loud and clean the kitchen aggressively. She didn't uninvite her daughter from a family event via text message." Owen sighed. "Look, they have been on me all morning. I have been managed. Kennedy, literally managed. Sloan has me rehearsing lines for the toast. I'm not allowed to mention the hardware stores. I have to say our family's investment portfolio instead of Dad's business. It's weird. Who is Sloane? I asked. Sloane Price? The consultant? She's intense. She's been coaching Mom on her posture for 3 days. And you're going along with this? It is not that serious, Owen said, his voice dropping to a whisper. It's one night. If it makes them happy, why not? Just maybe stay at the hotel tonight, if you show up. Mom is going to lose it, and Dad is already on edge because the governor might stop by. The governor? Yeah, it's a big deal. Look, I have to go. Sloane is waving at me. I love you. Love you too, I said, but he had already hung up. I walked through the terminal. Pulling my rolling suitcase behind me, the rhythmic thump, thump, thump of the wheels on the tile floor grounded me. It is not that serious. That was Owen's survival mechanism. Minimize, deflect, survive. But he was 26, the golden boy, the heir apparent. It was easy to minimize when you were still inside the circle. I sat on a bench near the baggage claim, even though I had checked nothing. I needed a moment before I faced the city. I opened my email archive on my phone. I remembered something. A request from 3 months ago. Marla had asked me to draft a thank you letter template for the Anchor tier donors. She had forwarded me a messy spreadsheet of early commitments, so I could personalize the merge fields. I searched for Harbor Light and draft. There it was. An email from Marla. Subject line, FWD, numbers for thank you notes. I opened the attached spreadsheet. It was dated 12 weeks ago. The total pledged amount in column G was $485,000. I switched apps and went to the current press release on the GALA website. The headline screamed, Celebrating $2 million in early commitments for Harbor Light Futures. I did the math in my head. 12 weeks ago, they had $500,000. Now they claimed $2 million? It was possible they had a massive influx of cash in 3 months. Possible, but unlikely for a regional charity that was still rebranding. The discrepancy sat in my stomach like a stone. A $1.5 million gap. Were they lying to inflate the hype? Or was the money real? But coming from somewhere that wasn't on the spreadsheet. I stood up. I was not going to turn around. I walked out to the taxi stand. The air in Briar Haven was cold and smelled of damp pavement. Where to? The driver asked, as he popped the trunk. I hesitated. My parents thought I was on a plane back to Chicago. Or maybe they thought I was crying in the terminal. The Larkspur Hotel, I said. Downtown. I was not going to the gala. I was not going to make a scene. I was going to sit in a room 3 miles away and figure out why my parents were so terrified of me seeing what was happening inside that conservatory. The Larkspur Hotel was a boutique property, the kind of place that put lavender sprigs on the pillows and charged $8 for a bottle of water. It was also, unfortunately, owned by the same hospitality group that managed the Larkspur Conservatory, where the gala was being held. As I checked in, the receptionist smiled brightly. She was young, with impeccable makeup and a blazer that looked sharply tailored. Welcome to Briar Haven, Ms. Wood, she said. Are you in town for the Harbor Light Gala tonight? We have a shuttle running to the conservatory every 15 minutes. I froze. My last name, of course. No, I said, my voice tight. I am just here for business, unrelated. Oh, that is a shame, she said, handing me my keycard. It is going to be quite the event. The floral arrangements have been coming in all day. It looks like a wedding. I took the key. Thank you. I went up to my room on the 4th floor. It was small but elegant, with a view of the river. In the distance, across the water and through the bare branches of the oak trees, I could see the glass dome of the conservatory glowing against the twilight sky. I walked to the window and pressed my hand against the cold glass. 5 years ago. We had driven past that conservatory in my father's pickup truck. There had been a wedding happening, limousines, women in floor-length gowns, security guards at the gate. Look at that, my father had said, chewing on a toothpick. A glass cage for rich peacocks. You couldn't pay me to eat dinner in there. I bet the food is cold and the conversation is colder. Marla had laughed. Who wants to be watched while they eat? It's unnatural. Now, they were the peacocks, and they had built a cage so exclusive that their own daughter couldn't get in. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened my laptop. I needed to work. I needed to stop feeling and start analyzing. I pulled up the Harbor Light Futures website again. I started looking at the metadata, the cached versions of the pages from 6 months ago. My phone rang. It was Tessa. "Hey," she said. "I made some calls, just quiet inquiries. I have a friend who used to do contract work for a firm in DHC, and she knows the name Sloane Price." "And?" "Kennedy. Sloane Price isn't a gala planner. I mean, she organizes events, but that is not her primary product." "What is her product?" "Crisis management," Tessa said. "Reputation laundering. She gets hired when an executive is about to be indicted, or when a company has a toxic spill they need to greenwash. She comes in, creates a distraction, usually a high-profile charitable initiative, and reshapes the narrative so the bad press gets buried under puff pieces about philanthropy." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the hotel's air conditioning. "My parents aren't criminals, Tessa," I said. "They are just insecure. They sold a hardware chain. They didn't spill oil in the Gulf." "I know," Tessa said gently, "but maybe the people they are trying to impress did. Or maybe the money flowing into this charity isn't as clean as it looks. You said the numbers didn't match. They don't. If Sloane Price is running the show, the event isn't about the charity. The event is a shield. And if you were uninvited, it means you were a crack in that shield." I looked out the window at the glowing dome in the distance. "They scrubbed me from the website. Tessa," I said. "My mom texted me only elites. That is not her voice. That is a script." "So what are you going to do?" Tessa asked. "Go home?" I looked at the reflection of my own face in the dark window. I looked tired. I looked like the dutiful daughter who had spent 5 years rewriting thank you notes and choosing tie colors and swallowing insults because I thought that was what loyalty looked like. I thought about Owen, rehearsing lines he didn't believe in. I thought about the $2 million that had appeared out of thin air. I thought about my father, a man who used to value a firm handshake above everything else. Now hiding behind a text message because a consultant told him to. "No," I said. "I am not going home." "Are you going to crash it?" "No," I said. "If I crash it, I look like the crazy ex-girlfriend of the family. I look unstable. That plays right into their narrative. Poor Kennedy. She just can't handle our success." "Then what?" "I am going to watch," I said. "I am going to figure out who is actually in that room. I am going to find out where that money came from, and I am going to find out why Sloane Price is so afraid of a marketing strategist from Chicago." "Kennedy," Tessa said, a note of warning in her voice. "Be careful. These people play for keeps." "I know," I said. I hung up the phone. I stood up and walked to the mirror. I smoothed the front of my sweater. I wasn't wearing a gala gown. I was wearing jeans and a blazer. I looked like myself. For the first time in 5 years, I wasn't trying to fit into their frame. I was standing outside of it. My parents wanted to be elites? Fine. They wanted to erase the past? Fine. But they didn't get to erase me. I opened my laptop again. I had work to do. I wasn't going to beg for a seat at their table anymore, but I was certainly going to inspect the legs of the table to see if the wood was rotten. I pulled up the vendor list for the gala, a document I had access to from months ago when I was helping with the budget. I scanned the names until I found one that made me pause. Vantage Civic Strategies. I had never heard of them, but they were listed under 3 different line items: guest relations, audio/visual coordination, and strategic messaging. It was rare for one vendor to handle 3 such distinct categories. I opened a new tab and typed Vantage Civic Strategies into the search bar. The cursor blinked. I was done being the dutiful daughter. Tonight, I was the strategist. And my parents were about to learn that the problem with erasing someone is that you lose track of where they are standing. And right now, I was standing much closer than they thought. The next morning, the sky over Briar Haven was the color of a bruised peach. heavy with the threat of rain that never quite fell. I sat in the corner of a coffee shop called The Daily Grind, a place that used to be a dry cleaner when I was in high school. The exposed brick walls and Edison bulbs were new, part of the slow gentrification creeping through the downtown district, but the smell of burnt hazelnut coffee was comforting and familiar. Tessa Lang slid into the booth opposite me, unwinding a thick wool scarf from her neck. She looked tired, the kind of tired that comes from managing logistics for people who think deadlines are suggestions. "You look like you slept about as well as I did," Tessa said, pulling a laptop out of her bag. "Which is to say, not at all." "I was busy," I said, wrapping my hands around a ceramic mug. "I spent the night reading the tax returns of a nonprofit that supposedly saves the world." Tessa signaled the barista for a black coffee and leaned in, her voice dropping to a register that barely carried over the hum of the espresso machine. "I found out why your parents are suddenly obsessed with the word elite," she said. I stiffened. "Tell me." "It is not just the gala, Kennedy. The gala is basically an initiation ceremony. It is tied to a group called the Meridian Table." I frowned. "That sounds like a furniture store." "I wish," Tessa said. "It is a philanthropy circle. Invite only. They pitch it as a collective of high-net-worth individuals dedicated to rapid impact giving. But I made some calls to a friend who works in donor relations at the university. She said, the Meridian Table is notorious for its screening process. They do not just check your bank account. They check your status, your connections, and what they call your social usefulness." "Social usefulness," I repeated. The phrase tasted like copper. "What does that even mean?" "It means leverage," Tessa said flatly. "Can you get a permit approved? Do you know a judge? Can you sway a zoning board?" My friend said it is less like a charity and more like a lobbyist group that writes off its bribes as donations. I stared at the steam rising from my cup. It made perfect sense. My parents had money now, but money was common. Influence was rare. If Grant and Marla Wood wanted to secure their place in this new world, they didn't just need to write a check. They needed to prove they were players. And a daughter who questioned their motives? A daughter who remembered them when they clipped coupons? She was not useful. She was a liability. "There is more," Tessa said, opening her laptop. I looked into the board members of Harbor Light Futures. 3 of them are founding members of the Meridian Table. It is a closed loop, Kennedy. The people raising the money and the people spending the money are the same people. I felt a sharp pull of anxiety in my stomach. "I need to make a call." I stepped outside, leaving Tessa with her coffee. The air was brisk, smelling of wet asphalt. I scrolled through my contacts until I found Dev Patel. Dev and I had worked together at my first agency in Chicago. He had been a brilliant, paranoid data analyst who eventually left marketing to work in compliance for a regional bank. He was the most risk-averse person I knew. He answered on the second ring. "Kennedy, please tell me you are not calling for a reference. I am in the middle of an audit." "No reference," I said, leaning against the brick wall of the coffee shop. "I need a hypothetical." "I hate hypotheticals," Dev said. "They are usually crimes in disguise." "Hypothetically," I said, ignoring him, "if a charity had a sudden influx of cash, say $2 million in 3 months, but their donor list didn't match the total, how would they structure that? If they wanted to hide where the money came from?" There was a long silence on the other end. I could hear the click of a keyboard. "Are we talking about a 501c3? Dev asked. "Yes. Pass-through donations," Dev said. His voice had lost its joking tone. "If I wanted to wash money through a nonprofit, I would not have the donor give it directly. I would have them give it to a donor-advised fund or a private foundation first. Those entities bundle the money and then cut a check to the charity. The charity lists the foundation as the donor, not the individual. It is legal, usually, but if the numbers are not adding up, or if the original source is trying to avoid disclosure rules, it gets murky." "What are the red flags?" I asked. "Structure," Dev said. "Look for vague labeling. Look for money that comes in and goes right back out to vendors. If a nonprofit takes in $2 million and immediately pays $1.5 million to a consulting firm for capacity building. That is a red flag. That is not charity. That is a laundromat. I thanked him and hung up. My heart was hammering a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. I went back inside and sat down. We need to look at the spending, I told Tessa. For the next 2 hours, we sat in that booth, ignoring the lunch rush that swelled around us. I pulled up the public filings for Harbor Light Futures. They were available online, though buried deep in a state database that required 3 different CAPTCHAs to access. The document was 20 pages of dense, bureaucratic text. I scanned the expense columns. Here, I said, pointing to line 17. Look at this. Tessa squinted at the screen. Strategic Communications, $600,000. And here, I said, scrolling down, brand partnerships, $400,000. That is $1 million in overhead, Tessa said, her eyes widening. For a local charity? Kennedy, the hospital I work for doesn't spend that on marketing in a year. And look at the direct services, I said. Community outreach, $50,000. Emergency assistance, $30,000. It was grotesque. They were spending 10 times as much on talking about the work as they were on doing the work. It was a shell game. The money was pouring in from the Meridian Table elites, filtering through the Harbor Light accounts, and then flowing out to… where? To the vendors, to the consultants. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from Owen. I hesitated before opening it. I wasn't sure I could handle another minimization, another plea to just let Mom have her big night. I tapped the screen. It was a photo. It was taken from the wings of the stage at the Larkspur Conservatory. The lighting was dramatic, casting long shadows across the floor. In the center of the stage, my parents stood behind a clear acrylic podium. My father was wearing a tuxedo that I knew cost more than my first car. My mother was in a silver gown, looking radiant and terrified. Standing next to them, holding a clipboard, was a woman with sharp, angular hair and a posture that screamed authority. That had to be Sloane Price, but it was the caption Owen had added that made my breath catch. Rehearsal. Look at the teleprompter. I zoomed in on the photo. The resolution was high enough that I could read the white text scrolling on the glass screen in front of my father. We could not have built this legacy without the unwavering support of our children, Owen and Kennedy. Their belief in our mission is the glue that holds this family unity together. I stared at the words until they blurred. Family unity. Marla was going to stand up in front of 300 people, senators, CEOs, the cultural architects of Briar Haven, and use my name as a prop. She was going to credit me for supporting a mission I knew nothing about, for a legacy I had been explicitly banned from witnessing. It wasn't just a lie, it was a theft. She was stealing my identity, my consent, and my name to polish the veneer of her perfect family. She wanted the credit of being a good mother without the inconvenience of actually having her daughter in the room. I felt a sensation that was hotter than anger and colder than sadness. It was the humiliation of being rewritten. I was a character in a book they were writing, and they had decided that the fictional version of Kennedy was much more convenient than the real one. Kennedy? Tessa touched my arm. You went pale. I turned the phone so she could see. They are going to toast me, I said. They uninvited me, told me I wasn't elite enough to walk through the door. And tonight, they are going to use my name to sell their family values. Tessa read the screen and sat back, her expression hardening. Okay, she said. Now I am mad. I am not mad, I said, and I was surprised to find that it was true. I am done. What do you want to do? I want to know the rest, I said. I want to know who is getting hurt, because if they are lying about me, they are lying about everything else. Then you need to talk to Denise, Tessa said. She is a volunteer. She has been with Harbor Light since before the rebranding. She agreed to meet us, but she is scared. Let's go, I said. We met Denise Harrow on a park bench near the river, 3 blocks away from the bustling preparations at the conservatory. Denise was in her 60s, wearing a sensible raincoat and gripping a canvas tote bag, as if someone might try to snatch it. She looked at me with suspicion when Tessa introduced us. "You're the daughter," Denise said. It wasn't a question. "I am," I said, "but I'm not here on their behalf. I was told not to come tonight." Denise studied my face, looking for the lie. She must have seen something in my expression, perhaps the exhaustion, perhaps the resolve, because her shoulders relaxed slightly. "I used to run the food pantry," Denise said, her voice quiet. "Every Tuesday and Thursday, we fed 200 families a week. Real food, fresh produce." "What happened?" I asked. "The new management came in 6 months ago," she said. "The consultants, Vantage Civic Strategies, they said the pantry didn't align with the new vision of empowerment. They said handing out food was paternalistic. So they changed the program?" "They shut it down," Denise said. "They fired the program coordinator. They told us volunteers that we were moving to an advocacy model. They gave us iPads and told us to collect data on the families instead of feeding them." "Data?" Tessa asked. "Surveys," Denise said, spitting the word out like a curse. "They wanted to know about their debts, their housing situations, their employment history. They said it was for a needs assessment, but we never gave them any help. We just took their information." "And the volunteers?" I asked. "Did anyone complain?" "Of course we did," Denise said. "And then they brought out the papers, non-disclosure agreements. They said it was standard for brand protection. They said if we spoke disparagingly of the organization, we could be sued for damages. Most of the old guard left. I stayed because, well, I thought maybe if I stayed, I could still help someone." She looked down at her hands. "But there is no help, Ms. Wood. There are just consultants in expensive suits talking about synergy while the food rots in the warehouse." "Do you have a copy of the NDA?" I asked. "I didn't sign it," Denise said. "That is why I am not allowed in the building anymore. Today was my last day." She reached into her tote bag and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. "I grabbed this from the trash on my way out. I don't know if it means anything, but it seemed wrong. It was an invoice. It was crumpled and coffee-stained, but legible. Vendor, Vantage Civic Strategies. Service, Community Narrative Shaping. Amount, $45,000. I looked at the date. It was from last week. "Thank you, Denise," I said. "You have no idea how much this helps." Back in the hotel room, the atmosphere had shifted. The curtains were drawn against the afternoon sun. My laptop was open on the desk, the screen glowing in the dim light. Tessa was pacing, making calls to her own network, trying to find a connection to Vantage. I was digging into the code. I was not a hacker. I didn't know how to break firewalls or decrypt servers, but I was a digital marketer. I knew how websites were built. I knew that when people rushed to update a site for a big event, they often left back doors open, hidden pages, unlinked directories, test environments that were never properly secured. I went to the Harbor Light GALA landing page. I right-clicked and selected Inspect Source. The HTML code cascaded down the right side of the screen. I scrolled through the div tags and script references. It was a WordPress site, heavily customized. I searched for the term RSVP. I found a commented-out section of code. It was a link to a hidden form, likely used by the event staff to manually register VIPs who considered themselves too important to use the public portal. I copied the URL and pasted it into my browser. A plain white page loaded, no graphics, no branding, just a list of radio buttons and a text field. Select guest tier. Tier 1. Anchor, Tier 2. Summit, Tier 3. Legacy. I clicked on Tier 3. Legacy. A drop-down menu appeared, populated with names. I scrolled. The names were a who's who of the regional power structure, a state senator, a real estate developer known for aggressive zoning battles, the CEO of the bank where Dev worked, and there, near the bottom, Grant and Marla Wood, Legacy Host Partners. I clicked on their entry. The form auto-populated with their details. Access level, all access, table assignment, the Meridian Center, notes, keynote introduction, handling, agent, Sloan Price. I sat back. my pulse thrumming in my ears. The tears weren't just about donation amounts. They were about access. Legacy guests were the inner circle. I went back to the source code. I looked at the scripts running on the page. There was a tracking pixel, standard for marketing, but there was another script, one I didn't recognize. It pointed to a domain that wasn't Harbor Lights. CDN, Vantage-Civic, com/assets/tracker, Vantage again. I opened a new tab and searched for the domain. It redirected to a login page for Vantage Civic Strategies. I pulled out the invoice Denise had given me. I pulled out the notes I had made from the public filings. Vantage Civic Strategies was the common denominator. They were the consultants paid to rebrand the charity. They were the firm managing the community narrative. They were hosting the digital assets for the guest list. And according to Tessa's earlier research, Sloane Price, the woman managing my parents, was likely attached to them. It was too intertwined. A consulting firm shouldn't be running the donor database, the PR strategy, and the volunteer program simultaneously. That wasn't consulting. That was occupation. "Tessa," I said, "come look at this." She came over and looked at the screen. "Vantage is everywhere." "They are running the show," I said. "Harbor Light is just the skin. Vantage is the muscle and the brain." "But why?" Tessa asked. "To skim fees?" "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe to control the people in that room. If you control the charity, you control the social hierarchy. You decide who is elite and who isn't. You decide who gets to sit at the meridian table." I looked at the time. It was 4 in the afternoon. The gala started at 7. "I need to get in there," I said. "Kennedy? You can't," Tessa said. "Security will be tight. If you show up at the door, they will turn you away. It will be a scene." "I am not going to show up at the door," I said. "I am going to show up at the loading dock." I picked up my phone. I searched my email for an old contact, a man named Miguel Rios. He was the AV lead for the production company that usually handled events at the conservatory. I had worked with him 2 years ago on a product launch. He was a perfectionist who hated it when clients messed up his aspect ratios. I dialed his number. "Miguel?" I said when he answered. "It's Kennedy Wood, from the Tech Summit last year." "Kennedy," he said. His voice distracted. I could hear the clang of metal scaffolding in the background. "I am a little buried right now. We have a show in 3 hours." "I know," I said. "That is why I am calling. I am looking at the run of show files for the Harbor Light Gala. I helped design the projection loops." This was a lie, but a grounded one. "Yeah? Yeah. I think I sent you the wrong aspect ratio for the sponsor loop. The logos are going to stretch on the main screen. It is going to look amateur." Silence. I knew Miguel. The word amateur was his trigger. "How bad?" he asked. "Bad," I said. "Pixelated, but I have the corrected file on a drive. I am in town. I can drop it off. It will take 5 minutes to swap it out. I can't let guests in early. Kennedy, Sloane is on a rampage." "I am not a guest," I said. "I am a fixer. You know I am good for it. Miguel, do you want the logos to look like garbage when the governor walks in?" He sighed. "Come to the North Service entrance. Text me when you are there. 5 minutes. Kennedy, in and out." 5 minutes, I promised. I hung up and looked at Tessa. "I am in." "You are insane," Tessa said, but she was smiling. "What are you going to wear?" "Not a gown," I said. I changed into black trousers and a black turtleneck. It was the uniform of production crews everywhere. Invisible, professional. I took a cab to the edge of the park and walked the rest of the way. The sun was setting, casting long, bruised shadows across the lawn of the conservatory. The building was magnificent, a Victorian glass palace glowing from within. Filled with tropical plants and the promise of exclusivity, I could see the florists unloading vans, carrying towering arrangements of white orchids and hydrangeas. The flowers were taller than the people carrying them. I stood in the shadow of a large oak tree, watching the procession. It didn't look like a charity event. It didn't look like a gathering of people who wanted to feed the hungry or house the poor. It looked like a fortress. The security guards at the perimeter were wearing earpieces. The staff moved with fearful efficiency. The elites were about to arrive, and everything had to be perfect. I thought about my parents inside, practicing their lines about family unity. I thought about the text message. Please respect our wishes. I was respecting their wishes. They wanted a perfect event. I was just going to make sure that the truth was on the guest list. I checked my phone. I had the drive in my pocket. I had the documents Denise gave me. I had the knowledge of the hidden tears. I texted Miguel at the north door. I watched the florists carry the last of the orchids inside. The heavy doors swung shut, sealing the light inside. This was not a celebration. It was an operation, a carefully constructed machine designed to extract money and influence, fueled by vanity and lubricated with lies. And I was about to throw a wrench right into the gears. I walked toward the service entrance, my footsteps silent on the damp pavement. I wasn't Kennedy the daughter anymore. I wasn't Kennedy the marketing strategist. I was the glitch. The service entrance of the Larkspur Conservatory smelled of diesel exhaust and damp cardboard. It was a sharp industrial contrast to the scent of jasmine and white roses that I knew was waiting for me on the other side of the heavy steel doors. Miguel Rios was waiting for me by the loading dock, checking a clipboard with the frantic energy of a man who was 3 hours behind schedule. He looked older than I remembered, the gray in his beard more pronounced, but he still wore the same black cargo vest filled with gaffer tape and cable ties. "You are a lifesaver," Miguel said, not looking up as I approached. The projection loop was stuttering. If the sponsor logos look pixelated, I don't get paid. And if I don't get paid, I don't eat. "I brought the clean file," I said, holding up the flash drive. 1080p, optimized for the LED wall. Miguel grabbed the drive and finally looked at me. "You are dressed like a stagehand. Kennedy. Trying to relive the glory days?" "Something like that," I said. "Can I run this to the booth? I want to make sure the aspect ratio holds." "Go ahead," Miguel said, waving me through. "Just keep your head down. The lady running the show, Sloane, she is watching everything. If you are not holding a clipboard or a flower arrangement, you are a target." I slipped past him into the service corridor. The transition was jarring. One moment I was in a concrete tunnel, and the next I was stepping onto the periphery of the main event floor. The conservatory was breathtaking. The glass ceiling soared 50 feet above us, revealing the twilight sky turning a deep, bruised purple. The room was a forest of white orchids and silver table settings. It was beautiful, expensive, and meticulously staged. I kept my head down, walking with the purposeful stride of someone who had a job to do. I navigated the maze of round tables, my eyes scanning the room. I needed to see the layout. I needed to see where the power was sitting. I found the head table near the stage. It was elevated slightly on a carpeted riser, giving it a clear view of the rooms and, more importantly, ensuring the room had a clear view of it. A gold placard in the center read, "The Wood Family. Complete." I stopped. The breath left my lungs in a sharp rush. There were 4 chairs, 4 place settings, 4 name cards printed on heavy, cream-colored cardstock in elegant calligraphy. Grant Wood, Marla Wood, Owen Wood, Kennedy Wood. I stared at my own name. It was right there, next to Owen's. I had been explicitly uninvited. I had been told via text message to stay away because I wasn't elite enough. And yet, here was my seat. Here was my name. It hit me with the force of a physical blow. They didn't want me here, but they needed the idea of me here. They needed the visual of the empty chair, or perhaps they assumed I wouldn't show up, and they could tell people I was sick, pointing to the empty seat as proof of their benevolence. We saved a seat for poor Kennedy, but she couldn't make it. Or worse, maybe they thought I would cave. Maybe they thought I would show up anyway, desperate for their approval, and slide gratefully into this seat, validating their control. "Excuse me." I jumped. A young woman with a headset around her neck and a stack of papers in her arms was standing next to me. She looked frazzled. "Are you at the host committee?" she asked, eyeing my black clothes. I need a sign-off on the program proof before we print the inserts. Sloan is busy with the lighting check. She mistook me for a coordinator. I didn't correct her. Let me see it, I said, holding out my hand. She handed me a glossy brochure. It was heavy, expensive. The cover featured a stylized lighthouse logo and the words, Harbor Light Futures, illuminating the path. I flipped it open. Our mission. The text read, to empower Briar Haven's most vulnerable through 3 pillars of support: educational access, workforce development, and nutritional security. I scanned the paragraph under nutritional security. The Harbor Light Community Pantry Initiative provides fresh, healthy food to over 200 families weekly, ensuring that no neighbor goes hungry. My stomach twisted. Denise had told me explicitly that the pantry had been shut down months ago. She said the consultants called it paternalistic. She said the food was rotting in a warehouse. And yet, here it was in print, a lie on glossy paper. Is there an issue? The young woman asked, tapping her pen against her hip. No, I said, handing it back. The copy looks consistent with the fraud. I thought, great, she said, and scurried away. I moved toward the back of the room, toward the AV booth. I needed to find Miguel again. I needed to get out of the open before someone who actually knew me spotted me. The AV booth was a raised platform draped in black cloth. Monitors glowed in the darkness, displaying camera feeds from every angle of the room. Miguel was at the main console, typing furiously. File is loaded, he said without looking up. It looks clean. Thanks, Kennedy. No problem, I said. I watched the screens. There were 4 cameras set up, 1 on the stage, 1 on the audience, and 2 roaming. That is a lot of coverage for a dinner, I said. It is not just a dinner, Miguel said. It is a broadcast. We are streaming live to the donor portal and recording for the archives. I looked at the recording interface on his screen. The output path caught my eye. Usually, these files save to a local drive or the client's server. This path read, cloud destination, vantage _ secure _ event _ stream. Vantage? I asked. The consulting firm? Yeah, Miguel grunted. They insisted. Usually, I hand the drive to the client at the end of the night, but Sloan gave me specific instructions. The stream goes directly to their private cloud. No local backup, no copies. That is unusual, I said. It is annoying, Miguel corrected. If the internet drops, we lose the recording, but she said it was a security protocol, something about protecting donor privacy. I looked at the blinking red light on the screen. Protecting privacy, or controlling the evidence. If Vantage owned the only copy of the footage, they could edit it. They could cut out anything that didn't fit the narrative. They could delete a heckler. They could erase a mistake. Kennedy would. The voice came from behind me. It was low, smooth, and terrified me more than a shout would have. I turned slowly. Sloan Price was standing at the bottom of the ramp leading to the booth. She was even more striking in person than she had been in the photos. She wore a tailored white tuxedo suit that looked like it had been carved out of marble. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant knot. She wasn't smiling, but she wasn't frowning either. She was assessing me. Sloan, I said. I kept my voice level. I don't think we have been formally introduced. We haven't, she said, walking up the ramp. Her heels made no sound on the carpet. But I know your work, the rebrand you did for the Tech Summit in Chicago. Clean, minimalist. I liked how you used negative space to suggest exclusivity. She stood close to me. Too close. She smelled of expensive soap and ozone. What brings you to the AV booth? Kennedy? She asked. I was under the impression you were unavailable tonight. I am in town for a client, I lied. I dropped off a file for Miguel. An old favor. I was just leaving. Sloan studied my face. Her eyes were a pale, icy blue. She looked like she was trying to solve a math problem. A client, she repeated. In Briarhaven? On the same night your parents are hosting the most significant event of their lives? Coincidence, I said. I don't believe in coincidence, Sloane said. I believe in strategy, and I believe in optics. She gestured toward the room, toward the empty tables waiting for the donors. Your parents have worked very hard for this night. Kennedy, they have reinvented themselves. That is not an easy thing to do in a town that remembers your grandfather's pickup truck. I know, I said. Do you? Sloane tilted her head. Because reinvention requires discipline. It requires a unified front. A loose thread can unravel the whole tapestry. She reached out and adjusted the collar of my black turtleneck. Her fingers were cold. You have good brand instincts, she said softly. Don't let emotion cloud your professional judgment. If you are here to cause a scene, remember that a scene doesn't just hurt the target, it stains the person who makes it. I am not here to make a scene, I said. I told you, I am leaving. Good, Sloane said. She stepped back, the warmth returning to her face as if she had flipped a switch. Enjoy your client meeting, and tell Miguel to boost the gain on the podium mic. Your father tends to mumble when he is nervous. She turned and walked away, disappearing into the maze of tables. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. My hands were shaking. She hadn't just threatened me, she had diagnosed me. She saw me as a rival strategist, not a daughter, and she was right. I hurried down the ramp, aiming for the exit. I needed to get out before I ran into my parents. I was halfway to the service corridor when a hand grabbed my elbow. Ken? I spun around. It was Owen. He looked pale. His tuxedo fit perfectly, but he wore it like a costume. He was sweating. Owen, I whispered, pulling him into the shadow of a large ficus tree. What are you doing? You can't be seen talking to me. I saw you on the monitors, he said. I was backstage. Ken, I'm going to throw up. Breathe, I said. What is it? The speech? It is not just the speech, he said. He looked around wildly. They want me to propose. I stared at him. Propose? To Sarah? Yes, Owen hissed. Tonight, on stage, during the toast. Sloane scripted it. She said it would be the emotional climax of the evening. She said donors open their wallets when they feel like they are part of a family moment. Does Sarah know? I asked. No, Owen said. That is the worst part. Sloane said it has to be a surprise to get the genuine reaction. But Ken, I haven't even bought a ring. Sloane gave me one, a prop ring. She said we can swap it out for a real one later. My jaw tightened. This was sick. It was a play. They were directing his life like it was a soap opera. You don't have to do it, I said. I do, Owen said, his voice cracking. Dad said if I don't go through with the program, he is cutting off the funding for my startup. He said I need to show commitment to the family brand. That is not family, I said fiercely. That is blackmail. It is the same thing with them now, Owen said. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. Take me with you. Let's just leave. I can't, I said. Not yet, and you can't either. If we leave now, they win. They spin it. They say we are unstable. We have to be smarter than that. I squeezed his arm. Don't propose. Owen, go up there. Say your lines about the hardware store or whatever they let you keep. But do not propose. If you do that, you sell the one thing that is actually yours. Sloane is watching, he whispered. Let her watch, I said. She is a consultant. Owen, not God. I pushed him gently back toward the green room. Go, before they notice you are gone. He slipped away, looking like a ghost in a tuxedo. I turned and walked out the service doors, back into the cold night air. My phone buzzed as soon as I hit the parking lot. It was a message from Tessa. I have the contract. Meet me at the car. Tessa was waiting in her sedan with the engine running and the heater blasting. I slid into the passenger seat, shivering. You were in there a long time, Tessa said. I was about to send a search party. I saw the table, I said, staring at the dashboard. They set a place for me, Wood family, complete, Tessa grimaced. That is twisted. It gets better, I said. Owen is supposed to propose on stage with a prop ring, and the program lists the food pantry as a thriving initiative. Well, Tessa said, reaching into the back seat and grabbing a folder, this explains why they need the lies to look so expensive. She handed me a document. It was a photocopy of a contract, redacted in places, but the numbers were clear. How did you get this? I asked. My friend at the venue, Tessa said. She handles the vendor billing. She let me peek at the file while her boss was on a smoke break. This is the master agreement between Harbor Light Futures and Vantage Civic Strategies. I flipped to the payment schedule. There were the standard fees, retainers, hourly rates for PR, event management costs, but there was a line item at the bottom, highlighted in yellow highlighter. Impact assurance fee, $150,000, payable upon successful execution of GALA narrative targets. Impact assurance fee, I read aloud. What the hell is that? I Googled it, Tessa said. It is not a standard accounting term. It looks like a success fee, but usually, success fees are for fundraising targets. This is tied to narrative targets. They are paying Vantage to guarantee the story, I said. They are paying them to ensure that the world believes Harbor Light is saving the city, even if they aren't saving anyone. It is buying credibility, Tessa said. It is buying a verified checkmark for their reputation. I looked at the number again. $150,000. That could have fed the 200 families in the pantry for a year. Instead, it was going to Sloan Price to script a fake proposal and print lies on glossy paper. I felt a wave of nausea. We have enough, Tessa said. We have the shutdown program. We have the fake numbers. We have the contract. We can blow this up. Kennedy, we can call the local paper right now. I looked at the conservatory. The guests were starting to arrive. Limousines were pulling up to the valet. I saw women in sequins and men in velvet blazers stepping out, laughing, shaking hands. Inside that room were donors who genuinely believed they were helping. There were volunteers who had given years of their lives. If I blew this up tonight, if I caused a scandal, the charity would collapse. The innocent people would be collateral damage. The donors would feel duped and might stop giving to any charity. And my parents? They would be humiliated, destroyed. Perhaps, I hesitated. Was that what I wanted? Revenge? No, I said slowly. Not the paper, not yet. Why not? Because if we just scream fraud, it becomes a he said, she said. Sloan is too good at spin. She will say, I am a disgruntled daughter. She will say the contract is misinterpreted. She will bury us. So what do? We don't make a scene, I said, thinking of Sloan's words. We make a record. We give the evidence to someone who can't be spun, someone the room has to listen to. Who? Eleanor Whitlock, I said. Tessa's eyes went wide. The keynote speaker? The billionaire philanthropist? She is the keynote, I said. She is the moral authority in that room. If she knows the truth, she won't let them use her reputation to launder theirs. She is famous for her due diligence. How do we get to her? Tessa asked. She will be surrounded by security. I have an idea, I said, but we have to move fast. My phone buzzed again. I looked down. It was a text from Marla. We love you. Please don't make tonight difficult. I stared at the screen. We love you. A phrase that used to mean safety. Now it was a preamble to a request for silence. Please don't make tonight difficult. They knew I was in town. Sloan must have told them. Or maybe they just felt the pressure in the air. The static electricity that comes before a storm. They weren't afraid of a fight. They weren't afraid of me yelling. They were afraid of my presence. They were afraid that if I stood in that room, the real version of me would shatter the fake version they had built. I typed a reply, then deleted it. I wasn't going to make it difficult. I was going to make it clear. Drive, I said to Tessa. We need to print some documents. Where to? The nearest 24-hour copy shop, I said. And then, I need you to help me break into a gift bag. Tessa put the car in gear. I love it when you get professional. We pulled away from the curb, leaving the glowing glass cage behind us. The gala was starting. The orchestra was playing. My parents were smiling, but the script was about to change. The morning of the gala did not arrive with a fanfare. It arrived with a vibrating phone on a laminate bedside table. I had slept for perhaps 3 hours. A shallow, restless sleep, populated by dreams of drowning in white orchids. When I woke, the light filtering through the hotel curtains was gray and uncompromising. I rolled over and reached for my phone, expecting a follow-up from Marla or perhaps a panicked text from Owen. Instead, I found a stream of messages from numbers I had not saved in my contacts, but whose owners I knew by context. They were the friends of the new Wood family, the daughters of the country club set, the people who had been invited to the inner sanctum while I sat in a hotel room 3 miles away. "Hey, Kennedy, are we seeing you tonight? Your mom said you were swamped with work. So sad you are missing the big night. Marla told us about the scheduling conflict. Chicago keeps you busy. Are you flying in late? Or is the weather grounding you?" I scrolled through them, feeling a cold numbness spread through my chest. My mother was efficient. She hadn't just uninvited me. She had proactively managed the narrative of my absence. She had planted the seed early. Kennedy is busy. Kennedy is working. Kennedy is important, but elsewhere, so that when the gala began, no one would ask why the daughter was missing. My empty chair at the table would be a symbol of my high-powered career. Not my expulsion. It was brilliant. It was also deeply, personally insulting. I sat up and replied to none of them. I wasn't going to validate the lie, but I wasn't going to fight it via text message either. "Coffee," I said to the empty room. "I need coffee, and I need clarity." I showered and dressed mechanically. Jeans, a sweater, boots. I looked in the mirror. My eyes were tired, but clear. The confusion of yesterday, the hurt child wondering why she wasn't wanted, was receding. In its place was the cold, hard resolve of the professional who realizes the project is failing not because of bad luck, but because of bad management. I met Dev Patel at noon. He had agreed to meet me during his lunch break at a small deli near the financial district, far enough from the gala venue that we wouldn't be spotted by anyone in Sloane Price's orbit. Dev looked nervous. He kept checking his watch and glancing at the door. "You look like you are selling state secrets," I said, sliding into the booth opposite him. "In my line of work, lunch with a former marketing director who's asking questions about nonprofit compliance feels like an interrogation," Dev said. He picked at his sandwich. "I checked the statutes. Kennedy, I can't give you specific data on Harbor Light without a subpoena, but I can tell you how the mechanism works." "Tell me," I said. "Restricted funds versus unrestricted funds," Dev said. "That is the game. When a donor gives money, they can restrict it. This money is for food. This money is for rent assistance. The nonprofit is legally bound to use it for that purpose." "Okay," I said. "So, if Harbor Light takes money for food and spends it on galas, that is fraud." "Technically, yes, but practically, no." Dev took a sip of his soda. "Because smart organizations, or rather, organizations run by smart consultants, change the language of the restriction. They don't ask for money for food. They ask for money for strategic nutrition initiatives." "Strategic nutrition initiatives," I repeated. "That sounds like the program Denise mentioned." "Exactly," Dev said. "If the mandate is strategic nutrition, then hiring a consultant to write a report about nutrition counts as an expense. Hosting a gala to raise awareness about nutrition counts as an expense. Paying a PR firm to brand the nutrition program counts. The money is technically being used for the initiative, but not a single dollar buys a carrot or a loaf of bread." "It is a loop," I said. "They create a vague bucket, fill it with money, and then pay themselves to manage the bucket. And the beauty of it," Dev said, "is that the donor feels good. They think they bought food. The IRS sees the paperwork and sees that the funds were used for the initiative. Everyone is happy, except the people who are hungry." I thought about the impact assurance fee in the Vantage contract, $150,000. That was likely paid out of the strategic awareness bucket. Is it illegal? I asked. It is the grayest of gray areas, Dev said. If they are misrepresenting the direct impact, like saying they fed 200 families when they actually fed 0, that is fraud. That is material misrepresentation. But if they just say they are committed to ending hunger and spend $2 million on a party, that is just bad ethics, and being unethical isn't a crime. It should be, I said. Kennedy, Dev said, his voice softening. Be careful. The people who structure these things, they know the law better than we do. They build the maze so they can't get lost in it. But you can. I am not trying to navigate the maze, I said. I am trying to show people that the walls are made of paper. I left Dev and walked back toward the hotel, my mind racing. The impact assurance fee wasn't just a fee. It was the cost of the lie. Vantage was being paid to ensure that the definition of impact remained loose enough to include their own invoices. When I got back to the hotel, Tessa was waiting in the lobby. She had her laptop open on her knees and a look of grim satisfaction on her face. I found the link, she said as I approached. What link? The board, she said. I ran the names of the new Harbor Light board members through a few databases. It wasn't hard. These guys love to list their affiliations on LinkedIn. I sat down next to her. And? 6 of the 8 new board members are also members of the Meridian Table. Tessa said, but that is not the interesting part. The interesting part is the treasurer. She turned the laptop so I could see. Jonathan Vane, managing partner, Pemberton Equity Group. Pemberton Equity, I said. I know that name. You should, Tessa said. They specialize in distressed assets, but more specifically, they specialize in reputation rehabilitation. They buy companies that have had PR disasters, oil spills, labor scandals, CEO meltdowns, and they strip them, rebrand them, and sell them off. What is a guy like that doing running the finances of a local charity? He isn't running the charity, Tessa said. He is using the charity. Look at his other current projects. She clicked a tab. It was a news article from 6 months ago. Pemberton Equity acquires struggling logistics firm after environmental lawsuit. He buys the dirty company, Tessa explained. Then, suddenly, the dirty company becomes a platinum sponsor of Harbor Light Futures. They donate big money. They get a tax write-off. Sure, but mostly, they get to stand on stage next to your parents and receive an award for community leadership. It washes the stain off. It is a laundromat, I whispered. The whole gala. It isn't about raising money for the poor. It is about selling indulgences to the rich. You pay your fee, you get your award, and you get to be an elite. And your parents, Tessa said gently, are the face of the laundromat. They are the friendly, wholesome, local family that makes the whole operation look clean. I felt sick. My parents weren't the masterminds. They were the mask. I went up to my room and opened my laptop. I needed to find something, a memory that had been nagging at me all day. I searched my email archives. I went back years, back to when the hardware store was just a hardware store, back to before the buyout. I found it. A thread from November 2018. Subject: Charity dinner invite. It was an email I had sent to my parents. They had been invited to a gala for a hospital wing, a $10,000 table, and they were agonizing over the cost. Mom, Dad, the 2018 version of me had written, "You don't have to go. These things are performative. They spend more on the flower arrangements than they do on the medicine. If you want to help the hospital, just write a check to the pediatric ward. Don't pay for a rubber chicken dinner just so some rich guys can pat themselves on the back. Be real. That is what makes you guys great." I read my father's reply from back then. "You are right, kiddo. Performative. I like that word. We will send a check and stay home and order pizza. We are not show ponies." I stared at the screen. We are not show ponies. 8 years later, they were the main attraction at the circus. The tragedy wasn't that they had become bad people. The tragedy was that they had become the exact people they used to mock, and they hadn't even noticed the transition. They had been boiled slowly in the water of validation, and now they were fully cooked. My phone buzzed. It was Owen. I answered immediately. Owen? She is threatening Dad, Owen said. His voice was a jagged whisper. He sounded like he was hiding in a closet. Who? Sloane? Yes. I tried to back out. Kennedy. I told her I couldn't do the proposal. I told her it felt wrong. Good, I said. What did she say? She didn't even blink, Owen said. She sat me down and told me that Dad's new investment partnership, the one he is leveraging the rest of the buyout money on, is dependent on introductions from 3 men who are sitting at the head table tonight. She said if I disrupt the emotional flow of the evening, those introductions might not happen. That is extortion, I said. She called it relationship management, Owen said. She said, Owen, your father's future is built on these networks. Do you really want to be the reason he is excluded? I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. This wasn't just social climbing anymore. This was coercive networking. Sloane Price had my family in a vice. She had made them dependent on a system she controlled. And now she was squeezing. Where is Dad? I asked. Does he know? He is with her, Owen said miserably. He is nodding along. He is terrified. Ken, he thinks if this night fails, he is a nobody again. He thinks he will disappear. He won't disappear, I said. He will just be himself. To him, that is the same thing, Owen said. Listen to me, I said. Do not propose. I don't care what she says. I don't care about the introductions. If you do this, you lose yourself. Hold the line. Owen, I am coming. You are coming? Owen's voice spiked with panic. Kennedy, no. Mom said... I know what Mom said. I cut him off. I am not coming to dinner, but I am coming. I hung up. I looked at the pile of papers on the desk. The invoice from Denise, the contract Tessa had stolen, the list of board members and their conflicts of interest, the code from the website showing the hidden tiers, the discrepancy in the donation numbers. It was a puzzle, a dirty, complicated puzzle. If I walked into that room and started shouting, I would look like a lunatic. I would be the jealous daughter, the uninvited guest. Sloane would call security, and my parents would be mortified, and the machine would keep grinding. I needed a scalpel, not a hammer. I needed someone inside the room who had the power to stop the machine, but who wasn't part of the corruption. Eleanor Whitlock, the keynote speaker, a billionaire philanthropist from the East Coast, who was known for 2 things, her massive checkbook and her ruthless demand for transparency. She had once pulled a $10 million endowment from a university because she found out the dean was flying private on the scholarship fund. She was the wild card. Vantage and Sloane had likely courted her for months, showing her the polished, perfect version of Harbor Light. They needed her endorsement to legitimize the operation. If Eleanor Whitlock blessed the Meridian table, they were untouchable. But if Eleanor Whitlock knew the truth? I looked at the clock. It was 5 in the afternoon. The gala started at 7. Eleanor would be arriving soon for the VIP reception. Tessa, I called out, I need folders, plain ones, and I need to type a cover letter. I spent the next hour assembling the packet. I didn't write an accusation. I didn't write a manifesto. I simply arranged the documents in a logical order. Exhibit A, the public claims versus the internal reality, the food pantry. Exhibit B, the financial discrepancies, the missing $1.5 million. Exhibit C, the vendor conflict, Vantage Civic Strategies earning an impact assurance fee. Exhibit D, the governance issue, Pemberton Equity and the reputation laundry. I clipped a short note to the front. Ms. Whitlock, these are documents, not accusations. The success story you are about to endorse is a fabrication designed to protect the reputations of the board members, not the community. Please read before you speak. Gosh, a witness. I didn't sign my name. My name was a distraction. The facts were the weapon. I debated internally as I sealed the envelope. Would she care? She was a billionaire. Maybe she was part of the club. Maybe she would read this, laugh, and hand it to Sloane. Maybe I was handing over the evidence that would get me sued. But I remembered an interview I had read with her years ago. Integrity, she had said, is what you do when the room is dark. I had to bet on her integrity. It was the only card I had left to play that didn't involve destroying my parents publicly myself. I stood up to stretch. My phone pinged with a notification. Marla Wood added a new photo. I froze. I opened the app. It was a montage, a beautifully edited, sepia-toned video set to swelling instrumental music. The caption read, "Building a legacy requires sacrifice, love, and a family that stands together. So proud of us tonight." I watched the video. It cycled through old photos. There was the hardware store opening in 1995. There was a Christmas morning in 2005. There was a vacation to the Grand Canyon. And then I saw it. The Grand Canyon photo. The original had all four of us standing on the rim, windblown and laughing. I was on the far left, my arm around Owen, in the video. The photo had been cropped. I was gone. It was just Owen, Marla, and Grant. The next photo, my college graduation. In the original, I was in the center, holding my diploma, in the video. They had used a shot of just my parents looking at me, but I was out of frame. The focus was on their pride, not my achievement. It continued. Every image had been carefully selected or digitally altered to remove me. It wasn't sloppy. It was artistic. It was a visual rewriting of history where the Wood family consisted of three people: the visionary father, the devoted mother, and the loyal son. The daughter who asked questions? She never existed. I stared at the screen until the video looped and started again. Something inside me snapped, but it wasn't a snap of rage. It was the sound of a tether breaking. For days, I had been oscillating between hurt and anger. I had wanted them to apologize. I had wanted them to see me. I had wanted to be let back in. But watching that video, seeing the meticulous care my mother had taken to erase me, I realized something profound. This wasn't about me. It wasn't that they hated me. It was that I didn't fit the brand. To them, I was a product that had been recalled. I was a flaw in the marketing material. And you don't argue with a brand manager about your feelings. You don't cry to a corporation. I stopped viewing this as my parents versus me. I started viewing it as the system versus the truth. My parents were just cogs. Sloane was the operator. The Meridian table was the engine. And I was the wrench. I closed the app. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the phone. I felt a strange, cold calm settle over me. "Okay," I said. I turned to the closet. I had brought one dress, just in case. It wasn't a gala gown. It was a simple, black sheath dress I wore for client presentations. High neck, long sleeves, sharp lines. It was severe. It was professional. I put it on. I pulled my hair back into a low bun. I applied minimal makeup. I wasn't trying to blend in with the peacocks. I wasn't trying to outshine them. I looked like what I was, a strategist, a person who deals in facts. "Kennedy?" Tessa asked from the doorway. She was holding her keys. "Are you ready?" I picked up the manila envelope containing the packet. I felt the weight of it in my hand. It weighed almost nothing, but it contained the potential to level a $2 million lie. "I am ready," I said. "You know," Tessa said, looking at me with a mix of worry and admiration, "you don't look like a victim anymore." "I am not a victim," I said, walking past her to the door. "I am a liability, and tonight I am going to be the most expensive liability they have ever met." We walked out of the hotel room. I didn't look back. The sun had set. The city lights were flickering on. In the distance, the conservatory was glowing like a jewel box, filled with music and champagne and people who thought they owned the world. I walked toward it, not as a guest, not as a daughter. I walked toward it as a witness, and witnesses do not keep quiet. The air inside the Larkspur Conservatory was not just conditioned, it was curated. It smelled of white orchids, expensive champagne, and the specific metallic scent of ozone that seems to cling to high-end lighting rigs. I had slipped in through the side entrance near the catering kitchen, flashing an old staff badge I had kept from a previous life. The security guard, a bored man checking his phone, had barely glanced at it. In a tuxedo, everyone looks like a guest. In black production gear, everyone looks like a servant. I was wearing a black dress that straddled the line, simple enough to disappear, sharp enough to belong if challenged. I stood in the shadows of a large, potted fiddle leaf fig, watching the room fill. It was a sea of velvet and silk. The elite of Briar Haven had arrived, and they were desperate to be seen. I watched men in bespoke suits clap each other on the back, with a force that suggested aggression masked as camaraderie. I watched women in gowns that cost more than my first year of college tuition navigate the room like sharks in a coral reef, their eyes constantly scanning for someone more important to talk to. And in the center of it all, holding court near the ice sculpture, were my parents. Marla was wearing a silver gown that shimmered under the lights. She looked beautiful. She also looked brittle, as if a strong breeze might shatter her into 1,000 diamond-edged shards. Grant stood beside her, one hand resting possessively on the small of her back, the other gripping a crystal tumbler of scotch. They were laughing. It was a practiced laugh, one I had seen them rehearse in the mirror. Head thrown back, mouth open but not too wide, hand on the chest. I moved closer, hugging the perimeter of the room, keeping the massive floral arrangements between me and their line of sight. "They are just so grounded," a woman in a red taffeta dress said to her companion, just a few feet away from me. "That is what I love about Marla. She hasn't forgotten where she came from." "Absolutely," the man replied, nodding solemnly. "Real people. Salt of the earth. You don't find that kind of generosity in the old money crowd. The Woods are different. They care." I felt a physical nausea rise in my throat. Salt of the earth. My father was currently paying a consultant to erase his past. My mother had cropped her own daughter out of family photos to make the aesthetic more cohesive. They weren't grounded. They were untethered, floating in a bubble of validation that they had purchased at a premium. The surreal distance between the public myth and my private reality was dizzying. I felt like I was watching a hologram. The people in this room weren't seeing my parents. They were seeing the projection that Vantage Civic Strategies had beamed into their eyes. I turned to move further back into the shadows, but I wasn't fast enough. "Kennedy?" I froze. Mrs. Gable, the wife of the city's largest real estate developer, was standing right in front of me. She was holding a champagne flute and looking at me with genuine confusion. "Mrs. Gable," I said, forcing a smile that felt like it was made of wax. "It is good to see you. We thought you were coming," she said, tilting her head. "I ran into your mother at the salon yesterday, and she said you were stuck in London on business. She said you were absolutely crushed to miss it." London, that was a new one. Yesterday I was just busy. Today I had been shipped across the Atlantic. "Plans changed," I said smoothly. "I managed to catch a red-eye. I wouldn't miss this." Mrs. Gable beamed, touching my arm. "Oh, she will be so thrilled. She was talking about how hard you work. My Kennedy is taking over the world. She said, she is so proud of you, dear." The lie was so layered it was almost impressive. Marla had used my absence to brag. She had turned my exclusion into a status symbol. "My daughter is too successful to be here." "She is very supportive," I said, the words tasting like ash. "Well, go find her," Mrs. Gable urged. "Surprise her. She is over by the stage." "I will," I said. "I just need to find my seat first." I escaped before she could ask me about London. I made my way toward the front of the room, moving through the crowd like a ghost. I needed to see the table. I needed to see the physical manifestation of the gaslighting. I found it near the stage, on the raised platform reserved for the inner circle. The Wood family, complete, the table was set for 4. The china was gold-rimmed, the crystal sparkled, and there, at the seat facing the center of the room, was my name card, Kennedy Wood. I watched as a server approached the table. He was carrying a small velvet box, likely a favor for the VIP guests. He placed it carefully above my plate. Then he adjusted my chair, pulling it out slightly, angling it just so, as if I were expected to sit down at any moment. It was a prop. My empty chair wasn't an accident. It was a calculated piece of set design. It was there to show the room that the family was whole, even if one part was temporarily displaced by business, if they had removed the chair. People would have asked questions. Where's the daughter? Is there a rift? But an empty chair with a name card? That just said, delayed. That said, still one of us. They were using my name to anchor their legitimacy while actively pushing me out of the frame. Ken? The voice was a harsh whisper. I turned. Owen was standing behind a pillar, half hidden by a towering arrangement of hydrangeas. He looked terrible. His skin was the color of old parchment, and sweat had beaded on his upper lip despite the cool air of the conservatory. Owen, I said, stepping into the alcove with him. You look like you're about to pass out. I might, he said. He gripped my arm, his fingers digging into the fabric of my dress. I can't do it, Kennedy. I can't go up there and propose. I am looking at Sarah across the room, and she is so happy. And she has no idea that she is about to be a plot point in Sloane's screenplay. Where is the ring? I asked. In my pocket, Owen said. He patted his jacket. The prop ring. Sloane gave it to me 10 minutes ago, she said. Make sure you hold it up to the light so the cameras catch the sparkle. It is cubic zirconia. Ken, it isn't even real. She said we shouldn't risk a real diamond on stage. He let out a short, hysterical laugh. My engagement is a special effect. Listen to me, I said, keeping my voice low and steady. You do not have to do this. Dad said. I know what Dad said, I interrupted. He said he would cut you off. He said he would kill the introductions. He said you would ruin the night. He said I would be betraying the family, Owen whispered. He said if I don't do this, I am proving that I don't care about their future. I took his face in my hands. He was trembling. Owen, look at me. Their future is a house of cards. It is built on fake audits and paid consultants. If you propose tonight, you are gluing yourself to that house right before it collapses. But what do I do? He pleaded. If I just stand there, Dad will know. Sloane will know. Let them know, I said. Fear doesn't mean compliance is the only option. You can go up there. You can be a good son. You can thank everyone for coming, and then you can sit down. You don't have to follow the script. They will be so angry, he said. Let them be angry, I said. Anger is better than ownership. Right now, they own you. If you defy them, you take yourself back. It will hurt. Owen, I won't lie to you. They might scream. They might cut the money. But you will be able to look Sarah in the eye tomorrow morning. Can you do that if you propose with a fake ring for a fake reason? He closed his eyes. He took a shuddering breath. No, he said softly. I can't. Then don't, I said. Be the glitch. The glitch, he repeated. A small, terrified smile touched his lips. Okay. He straightened his jacket. He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in years. You came, he said, even after the text. I had to see the show, I said. Now go, before Sloane sends a search party. He nodded and slipped back into the crowd. I checked the time on my phone. 6:45. The keynote was scheduled for 7:15. Eleanor Whitlock would be in the green room or the VIP holding area. I needed to move. I navigated toward the stage. The crowd was thicker now, a solid wall of perfume and ambition. I kept my head down, avoiding eye contact. I spotted the entrance to the VIP area. It was guarded by 2 men in black suits with earpieces. Vantage security. I wasn't getting past them, but I saw someone else. Standing near the edge of the velvet rope, tapping furiously on a tablet, was a young woman with severe glasses and a no-nonsense bun. I recognized her from the articles I had read about Eleanor. This was Sarah Chang, Eleanor's personal executive assistant, the gatekeeper. She looked annoyed. She was arguing with a waiter about water brands. I took a breath. I reached into my bag and pulled out the manila envelope. It was thin, unassuming, just a few sheets of paper that proved the world was a lie. I walked up to her. "Excuse me," I said. She didn't look up. "Ms. Whitlock is not taking photo requests until after the keynote." "I am not here for a photo," I said. "I am here to save her reputation." That got her attention. She looked up, her eyes narrowing behind the frames. "Who are you?" "My name doesn't matter," I said. "But this does." I held out the envelope. "Inside this packet is proof that the financial data provided to Ms. Whitlock for tonight's event was altered," I said. "It contains proof of vendor conflicts, falsified program reports, and a fee structure that pays a consultant to guarantee a narrative." She stared at the envelope. She didn't take it. "If I take this," she said, "I have to vet it. Ms. Whitlock goes on in 20 minutes. "That is enough time to read the first page," I said. "The first page is the food pantry, the one that doesn't exist." She hesitated. She looked at the security guards, then back at me. She saw something in my face. Maybe the exhaustion, maybe the lack of deception. She took the envelope. "There is a note attached," I said. "Documents, not accusations. Please, just ask her to read it before she endorses anything. If this is a crank letter," she warned, "you will be blacklisted from every philanthropic event on the East Coast." "If it is a crank letter," I said, "I will blacklist myself." She nodded once, sharp and efficient, and turned on her heel, disappearing past the security guards. I let out a breath. It was done. The bomb was in the building. I turned to leave, to fade back into the shadows until the speech began. "Kennedy." The voice was bright, cheerful, and laced with cyanide. I turned. Sloane Price was standing 5 feet away. She was smiling. It was a terrifying expression because it didn't reach her eyes. Her eyes were dead calm. "Sloane," I said. "I thought we had an understanding," she said, stepping closer. She linked her arm through mine as if we were old friends going for a stroll. Her grip was iron. She steered me toward a side corridor, away from the ears of the donors. "You are persistent," she said. "I admire that. Persistence is a brand value." "I am not a brand," I said, trying to pull my arm away. She held tight. "Everyone is a brand, Kennedy. Some people just manage theirs better than others." She stopped in the alcove near the restrooms. The music from the ballroom was muffled here. "I saw you talking to Owen," she said. "He looks shaky. Did you give him a pep talk? Or did you rattle him?" "I told him the truth," I said. "Something no one else seems to be doing." Sloane sighed. She smoothed a non-existent wrinkle on her white tuxedo jacket. "Truth is relative," she said. "Here is the reality. Kennedy, your parents are on the brink of something massive. This foundation? It is just the start. The Meridian table is ready to back Grant's new venture. We are talking about generational wealth. We are talking about power." "And the fraud?" I asked. "Is that part of the venture?" "It is not fraud," she said dismissively. "It is creative accounting. It is standard practice. But you are a loose end. You are the glitch in the code." She stepped closer, dropping her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "So here is the deal. You leave, right now, you walk out that door, you get in a cab, and you go back to the hotel. You let tonight happen. You let Owen propose. You let Marla have her moment. And if I don't? If you do," she continued, ignoring me, "I will fix this. Next month, we will run a reunification campaign. We will stage a family dinner. We will have photos taken. I will write a press release about how you have joined the board as a strategic advisor. I will restore you, Kennedy. I will write you back into the story. You will be the prodigal daughter who returned to help steer the ship. You will be elite. I stared at her. She was offering me my family back. She was offering to undo the erasure, but the price was my silence. The price was becoming a co-conspirator. The transactional nature of it made my skin crawl. She thought my love for my parents was something she could negotiate, like a vendor contract. You think you can just write people into existence? I asked. You think you can edit emotions? I do it every day, Sloane said, and I get paid very well for it. I don't want to be in your story, I said, and I don't want to be restored. I am not a file you can recover from the trash bin. I pulled my arm free. I am staying. Sloane. Her smile vanished. The mask dropped. For a second, I saw the predator underneath. Then you are going to watch them burn, she said coldly, and it will be your fault. No, I said. It will be yours. I walked away from her. My legs were shaking, but my head was high. I hadn't gone 10 paces when I saw her. Marla. She was standing near the entrance to the ballroom. Wringing her hands, she saw me and stopped. Her face didn't crumple into rage. It didn't harden into the mask of the socialite. It just collapsed. She looked suddenly very small in her shimmering gown. Kennedy, she breathed. She walked toward me. Her hands were trembling. She reached out as if to touch my face, then pulled back. You came, she said. I asked you not to. I know, I said. Why, Mom, why the text? Why the lies about London? You don't understand, she said. Her voice was thin, reedy. You don't understand what it costs to survive in rooms like this. It costs everything, I said. It costs your integrity. It costs your family. No, she said, shaking her head frantically. It costs vigilance. Kennedy, do you remember the hardware store? Do you remember counting the till every night, praying we had enough to pay the supplier? Do you remember the fear? We were happy, I said. We were invisible, she cried, though she kept her voice to a whisper. We were nobody. People looked right through us. But here they see us. They respect us. But it is so fragile. Honey, one mistake, one wrong outfit, one awkward moment, and they lock the doors. We have to be perfect. I am not a mistake, I said. I am your daughter. You are difficult, she said, and there were tears in her eyes. You ask questions. You don't play the game. I was protecting us. Kennedy, I was afraid you would say something, do something, that would remind them we don't belong. So you erased me? I just put you aside, she said. Just for tonight, just until we were safe. I looked at her. I realized then that she wasn't a monster. She was an addict. She was addicted to the safety she thought this status gave her. She was terrified of sliding back into obscurity, and that terror had consumed her maternal instinct. You are never going to be safe here, Mom, I said gently, because these people don't like you. They like the money you give them, and the moment the money is gone, they will look through you again. No, she said. No, that is not true. We are friends. We are elites. Marla! Grant appeared at her side. He looked flushed. He saw me, and his eyes narrowed. He put a hand on Marla's shoulder, not to comfort her, but to steady her, to physically restrain her emotion. Kennedy, he said. His voice was boomingly jovial, the voice of the happy host. There has been a miscommunication. Clearly. We thought the flight was canceled. He was doing it. He was spinning the narrative right in front of my face. There was no miscommunication, Dad, I said. I got the text. Only elites invited. Oh, nonsense, he said, waving a hand. Your mother was stressed. Autocorrect. You know how technology is. And the name card? I asked. The empty chair? Was that autocorrect? He paused. His smile didn't waver, but his eyes went dead. We wanted to honor you, he said. And the photo? I pressed. The video montage where you cropped me out of the Grand Canyon? Was that honor? His composure fractured. It was a hairline crack. But I saw it. The jovial mask slipped, revealing a flash of pure, unadulterated annoyance. He looked at me not as a father looks at a child, but as a CEO looks at a subordinate who is ruining the quarterly report. "We did what was necessary," he hissed, his voice dropping so low only I could hear. "We did what we had to do to secure this family's future. If you were a team player, you would understand that, but you have always been selfish. Kennedy, always thinking about your own feelings instead of the bigger picture." There it was, the intent. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't stress. It was a choice. "I understand the picture perfectly," I said, "and I think it is about to change." Before he could respond, the lights in the ballroom dimmed. A hush fell over the crowd. "The keynote," Marla whispered, wiping her eyes. "We have to go. We have to sit." "Come," Grant commanded, gripping my arm. "Sit at the table. Smile. We will deal with this later." "I am not sitting at that table," I said, pulling away. "I am standing right here." He glared at me, furious. But he couldn't make a scene now. The spotlight was hitting the stage. He grabbed Marla's hand and dragged her toward the front of the room, toward the lie of the Wood family. Complete, I stayed in the shadows by the door. Eleanor Whitlock walked onto the stage. She was a small woman, perhaps 70 years old, with silver hair cut in a sharp bob and a suit that cost more than the building we were standing in. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She walked to the podium and adjusted the microphone. The room erupted in applause. My parents clapped the hardest, beaming up at her. Eleanor waited for the silence to be absolute. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was dry, crisp, and authoritative. "It is a privilege to be in Briarhaven tonight." She looked down at her notes. Or rather, she looked down at the papers resting on the podium. "I came here to speak about generosity," she began. "I came here to celebrate the work of Harbor Light Futures, and indeed, the promise of this organization is beautiful." She paused. She looked out at the crowd. Her eyes scanned the front row. They landed on my parents. Marla smiled, desperate and hopeful. "But generosity," Eleanor continued, her tone shifting slightly, "is meaningless without truth." The room went still. It was a subtle shift, a tightening of the atmosphere. "I have always believed," Eleanor said, "that the responsibility of the donor is equal to the responsibility of the recipient. We must give with open hearts, but we must also give with open eyes." She picked up a piece of paper. I recognized it. It was from my packet. "Tonight," she said, "I was made aware of some inconsistencies regarding the allocation of resources for this event." A murmur rippled through the room. I saw Sloane Price step out from the wings, her face a mask of sudden, sharp alert. She signaled to the sound technician, Miguel, to cut the mic. Miguel didn't move. He was looking at his screens. He was letting her speak. "Philanthropy is not a costume," Eleanor said, her voice rising. "It is not a shield for reputation. It is a sacred trust. And when that trust is obscured by complex vendor contracts and vague initiatives, the community suffers." She looked directly at the camera, the live stream camera that was feeding Vantage's private cloud. "Therefore," she announced, "I am deviating from my prepared remarks. Before I pledge my donation tonight, I am calling for an immediate, third-party audit of all funds raised this evening, and I am asking Harbor Light Futures to release a full, itemized list of all vendor payments, specifically those regarding strategic narrative assurance, by tomorrow morning." The silence in the room was deafening. It was the sound of 300 people holding their breath. Grant Wood had gone pale. Marla looked like she had been shot. "If the work is real," Eleanor said, placing the paper back on the podium, "then the truth is nothing to fear. Transparency is the only legacy that matters." She stepped back from the podium. There was no applause. For 5 seconds. There was just the hum of the air conditioning and the sound of a world cracking open. Then, someone started clapping, a slow, solitary clap. I looked. It was Owen. He was standing at the table, clapping. He wasn't looking at our parents. He was looking at Eleanor. Then Mrs. Gable clapped. Then a few others. It wasn't a thunderous ovation. It was a confused, hesitant, polite response to a disaster. I watched Sloane Price. She wasn't clapping. She was typing furiously on her phone. Her face tight with damage control. I watched my parents. They sat frozen, like statues in a museum that was burning down. They realized, in that moment, that the script had been shredded. Eleanor had read the packet. She hadn't named me. She hadn't screamed accusations. She had done something far more effective. She had shifted the floor beneath everyone. She had turned the lights on, and now the cockroaches had nowhere to hide. I leaned against the wall, feeling the adrenaline drain out of me, leaving me cold and clear. The applause was dying down. The murmurs were starting. The scandal was taking root. This wasn't the end. Sloane would spin this. My parents would fight. The lawyers would come. But the myth was broken. The perfect family was gone. I turned and looked at the exit. The night air was waiting. The real battle wasn't about getting into the room. It was about what happened next. Now that the doors were blown wide open, the silence that followed Eleanor Whitlock's remarks was not empty. It was heavy, suffocating, and textured with 300 different variations of panic. For 5 seconds, no one moved. It was as if the entire room had been encased in amber. Then, the spell broke, not with a bang, but with the sliding of chairs and the low, insect-like hum of whispering. I watched from my vantage point near the service entrance. The reaction wasn't uniform. The room fractured instantly into 2 distinct tribes. The first tribe consisted of the true power players, the legacy tier guests, the old money, the people whose names were on hospital wings not because they wanted status, but because they needed tax write-offs. They didn't gasp. They didn't gossip. They simply signaled for their checks. I saw the CEO of the regional bank catch his wife's eye, a subtle tilt of the head that meant, "We are leaving immediately." They stood up, smoothing their napkins on the table, and began to drift toward the exits, their faces blank masks of polite disinterest. They smelled the smoke, and they were not going to be caught in the fire. The second tribe, the summit guests, the climbers, the people my parents were so desperate to impress, pressed closer. They leaned into the tables, checking their phones, texting furiously. To them, this wasn't a tragedy. It was content. It was a scandal unfolding in real time, and they wanted a front-row seat. I saw Mrs. Gable looking frantically from Eleanor to my parents, her mouth slightly open, as if she were waiting for a punchline that had been delayed. My parents were frozen. Grant was gripping the edge of the table so hard his knuckles were white. Marla was staring at Eleanor, her expression one of shattered comprehension. She looked like a child who had just watched her favorite doll be beheaded. And Sloane Price? Sloane was moving. She didn't run. Running would admit defeat. But she walked with a velocity that cut through the crowd like a knife. She wasn't heading for my parents. She wasn't heading for Eleanor. She was heading for the AV booth. I pushed off the wall. I knew exactly what she was going to do. She was going to kill the feed. She was going to scrub the record. I moved along the perimeter, dodging waiters who were standing around looking confused. Holding trays of untouched beef tenderloin, I reached the ramp of the AV booth just as Sloane stormed up to the console. "Cut it," Sloane hissed. Her voice was low, but in the sudden quiet of the room, it carried, "Cut the live stream, now." Miguel, the AV lead, didn't flinch. He was an old-school technician who treated his equipment with more respect than he treated most people. He kept his hands on the faders. "We are still live," Miguel said calmly. "The contract states we broadcast until the closing remarks." "The closing remarks are canceled," Sloane snapped. "Kill the feed and delete the buffer." "I can't delete the buffer," Miguel said. "It is auto-saving." "Then wipe the drive." Sloane reached for the keyboard, her manicured fingers clawing at the controls. "We cannot have that clip circulating. Do you understand me? Wipe it." "Don't touch my board," Miguel said, his voice dropping an octave. He blocked her hand with his forearm. "And I can't wipe the drive, lady. I told you, it is not saving to my drive." "What are you talking about?" "It is saving to your cloud," Miguel said. Loud enough that the people at the nearest table, the board members of the local art museum, turned to look. "You set the path. Vantage Secure Event Stream. I don't have the admin password. You do. If you want to delete the footage, you have to do it from your own servers. Vantage controls the record. Not Harbor Light." The words hung in the air. "Vantage controls the record." I saw the realization hit the guests nearby. The charity didn't own its own footage. The consulting firm did. It was a small detail, but in the context of Eleanor's speech about transparency, it was a smoking gun. Sloane froze. She realized she had made a tactical error. By yelling, she had drawn attention to the very mechanism she was trying to hide. She looked up and saw me standing at the bottom of the ramp. Her eyes were black holes of fury. She knew, in that moment, she knew exactly who had handed Eleanor the packet. "You," she mouthed. I didn't smile. I didn't look away. I just watched her. "Ms. Price?" The voice came from the floor. It was the museum board chairman. "Is it true? Does your firm hold the only copy of the financial presentation?" Sloane spun around, her mask slipping back into place. "It is a standard security protocol for data protection," she said, her voice instantly smooth, though breathless. "We are simply—" "It doesn't sound standard," the chairman said. "It sounds like you are holding the keys." Sloane ignored him and pushed past me. Descending the ramp, she needed a new angle. She needed to get to Eleanor, but Eleanor was already occupied. I looked toward the stage. Eleanor had stepped down from the podium and was standing near the stairs, and standing right in front of her, clutching her canvas tote bag like a shield. Was Denise? Tessa must have brought her in through the confusion. I walked toward them, keeping my distance but getting close enough to hear. "You are certain?" Eleanor was asking. Her voice was not loud, but it had the terrifying precision of a judge delivering a sentence. "I ran the pantry for 6 years," Denise said. Her voice was shaking, but she stood her ground. "They shut it down in October. They told us the food model was obsolete. They replaced it with a digital awareness campaign. There is no food. Ms. Whitlock, there hasn't been a single can of soup distributed in 4 months." Eleanor looked at the program in her hand, the glossy brochure that claimed the pantry was thriving. She looked up and scanned the room until she found the table reserved for the board of directors. "I want the treasurer and the board chair in the green room," Eleanor said to her assistant. "Sarah, now, and tell them to bring the unredacted ledger." "They might refuse," Sarah said. "If they refuse," Eleanor said, her voice dropping to a chill temperature, "I will call the Attorney General from the stage microphone." She turned and walked toward the backstage area, her heels clicking a sharp rhythm on the floor. Denise watched her go, then looked at me across the crowd. She nodded. It was a small, frightened gesture, but it was enough. The chaos in the room was growing. The hum of conversation had turned into a roar. Waiters were clearing plates that hadn't been touched. The string quartet, unsure of what to do, had started playing a frantic version of Vivaldi's Spring, which only added to the surreal, sinking ship atmosphere. I felt a hand on my arm. It wasn't Sloane. It wasn't Grant. "Kennedy," it was Marla. She had pulled me into the shadow of a decorative column near the kitchen entrance. She looked unrecognizable. The carefully constructed facade of the Philanthropist of the Year had melted away, leaving a terrified woman with smeared mascara and eyes that darted around the room as if searching for an exit that didn't exist. "You have to stop this," she whispered. Her voice was frantic. "You have to go talk to her. You have to tell her it is a misunderstanding." "It is not a misunderstanding, Mom," I said. "It is a lie. Eleanor knows." "It is not a lie," Marla hissed. "It is branding. Everyone does it. The pantry was inefficient. We were pivoting to high-impact strategies. Vantage said it was the modern way. Vantage charged you $150,000 to tell you that, I said. And you paid them with money that should have bought food. We were building something. Marla grabbed my hands. Her palms were damp. For the family. For you. Do you think I care about the soup? I care about the legacy. I care about making sure no one ever looks at us like we are trash again. Is that why you sent the text? I asked. I needed to hear it. I needed her to say it to my face. Marla froze. She looked down at our joined hands. I sent the text, she said, her voice trembling. Because you don't know how to play the game, Kennedy. You never have. The game? The smiling, she said. The nodding. The way you look at things. You look at things like you are trying to take them apart. I saw you at Christmas. You looked at the new house like it was a crime scene. You looked at your father's friends like they were thieves. Some of them are thieves, I said. It doesn't matter, Marla cried out, then clamped a hand over her mouth. She lowered her voice again. It doesn't matter who they are. It matters that they accepted us. And I knew if you came tonight, you would stand there with that look on your face, that judging, sharp look. You would ask the wrong question. You would wear the wrong shoes. You would look out of place. She looked up at me, her eyes pleading for understanding. I couldn't risk it, she said. We were so close to being cemented in this circle. I couldn't let you be the reason we slipped back down. I wanted to save the family. Kennedy. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had raised me, who had bandaged my knees and taught me to read. I saw the fear that drove her. She wasn't malicious. She was just weak. She was so terrified of being ordinary that she was willing to be fraudulent. I gently pulled my hands away from hers. You weren't saving the family. Mom, I said quietly. You were editing it. I love you, she said. A desperate reflex. You know I love you. I know you love the idea of me, I said. You love the version of me that fits in the photo frame. But you don't love me, not enough to let me be in the room. That is not true, she sobbed. It is, I said. I can't love someone I am required to erase myself for. Mom, and you can't build a home on a foundation of silence. Belonging that you have to buy with lies isn't belonging. It is just renting space in someone else's house. Kennedy, please, she begged. Don't leave me here. They are all looking at us. Let them look, I said. There she is! Grant's voice boomed through the small corridor. He came striding toward us. His face flushed a deep, dangerous red. He wasn't sad. He was furious. He ignored Marla and loomed over me. He was a big man. And for the first time in my life, I felt a flicker of physical intimidation, but I didn't step back. You did this, he spat. He pointed a shaking finger at my chest. I saw you with the assistant. I saw you hand her the envelope. You little traitor. I gave her the facts. Dad, I said. The facts you hid. I hid nothing, Grant shouted. I was managing the optics. But you couldn't stand it, could you? You couldn't stand seeing us succeed without you. He laughed, a harsh barking sound. You are jealous, he said. That is what this is. You are jealous that we didn't need you anymore. You are jealous that Sloan could do in 6 months what you couldn't do in 5 years. You are unstable. Kennedy, you have always been unstable. Grant, stop, Marla whispered, tugging at his sleeve. No! Grant pulled away. She needs to hear it. She is a bitter, unstable girl who would rather burn down her own family's reputation than see us happy. Go back to Chicago. Kennedy, we don't want you here. You are sick. The words hung in the air, ugly and raw. Excuse me. Grant stopped. We all turned. Standing just a few feet away, holding a half-empty glass of wine, was Mrs. Gable. She had evidently come to find Marla, perhaps to offer comfort. But she had walked into the middle of the massacre. She looked at Grant with an expression of pure, unadulterated shock. Mr. Wood, she said, her voice chilly. I believe I just heard you call your daughter sick, Because she questioned your accounting. Grant's face drained of color. He realized, too late, that the mask had slipped completely. He tried to pivot, tried to find the jovial host voice. "Barbara," he stammered. Emotions are running high. It is a family dispute. You understand?" "I understand perfectly," Mrs. Gable said. She looked at him, then at Marla, and finally at me. Her gaze softened when it landed on me. "I think," she said to Grant, "that the instability might not be on her side of the family tree." She turned to me. "I am sorry, my dear. I think I will be leaving now. This atmosphere is toxic." She walked away. Grant watched her go. He knew what that meant. Mrs. Gable was the town crier. By tomorrow morning, everyone at the country club would know that Grant Wood wasn't a benevolent patriarch. He was a bully who screamed at his daughter in hallways. He sagged against the wall, defeated. "The toast," Marla whispered. "We still have the toast. Owen can fix this." She grabbed Grant's arm. "Where is Owen?" "The proposal. If he proposes, it changes the mood. It brings the love back. People love a proposal." She looked around wildly. "We have to find him. He is the closing act." I looked toward the stage. "I don't think he is doing the proposal. Mom." "He has to," Grant said, straightening up, clutching at the last straw. "He knows the deal." We walked out of the corridor, back to the edge of the ballroom. The stage was empty, but the microphone was still live. The string quartet had stopped playing. Owen was walking up the stairs to the stage. "There he is," Marla gasped, clutching her chest. "He is doing it. Oh, thank God. Where is Sarah? Is she in the front row?" Owen reached the podium. He looked small under the bright lights. He adjusted the microphone. He looked out at the room, at the confused donors, the fleeing elites, the panicked consultants. He found Sarah in the crowd. She was sitting near the front, looking terrified. Owen put his hand in his pocket. Marla held her breath. "He is getting the ring," she whispered. Owen pulled his hand out. It was empty. He gripped the sides of the podium. "My name is Owen Wood," he said. His voice cracked, then steadied. "I was supposed to come up here tonight and ask my girlfriend to marry me." A ripple of excitement went through the room. The summit guests raised their phones. "I was supposed to do that," Owen continued, "because a consultant told me it would be good for the brand. She told me it would create an emotional climax that would encourage you to donate more money." The room went deadly silent. Sloane Price, standing near the wings, looked like she had been slapped. "But I am not going to do that," Owen said, "because Sarah deserves better than to be a prop, and this charity, this community, deserves better than to be a stage set." He looked directly at where Grant and Marla were standing. "I love my parents," Owen said, "but we have lost our way. We thought that if we looked perfect, we would be good. But tonight we were reminded that looking good and being good are two different things." He looked at the empty spot where Eleanor had been. "I want to thank Ms. Whitlock," Owen said, "for reminding everyone what real integrity looks like. And I want to thank my sister, Kennedy, for showing up when she wasn't invited." He stepped back from the mic. "I am sorry," he said to the room. "Please drive home safely." He walked off the stage. He didn't look at us. He walked straight to Sarah, took her hand, and led her toward the exit. Marla let out a low, keen sound, like a wounded animal. Grant stood like a stone, watching his son, his heir, his investment, walk out the door. The proposal hadn't saved them. It had buried them. Suddenly, the speakers crackled. It wasn't Owen. It was Eleanor Whitlock's voice. She wasn't on stage. She was speaking from the backstage announce mic, the voice of God system usually used for safety announcements. "Ladies and gentlemen," her voice boomed, calm and final, "this is Eleanor Whitlock. In light of the information brought to my attention regarding the program discrepancies, I am officially placing my pledged donation on hold pending a full forensic review." The gasp in the room was audible. "I encourage all other donors," Eleanor continued, To request a detailed allocation report before fulfilling any pledges made this evening. Harbor Light Futures will be suspended from the National Philanthropic Registry until this matter is resolved. Good night. The feedback whined. And then silence. It wasn't a dramatic takedown. She didn't call the police. She didn't scream. She simply turned off the money. And in that room, turning off the money was more violent than a gunshot. The spell broke completely. The polite veneer shattered. Guests began shouting for their coats. Board members were yelling at each other. Waiters were abandoning their posts. It was over. I looked at my parents. They were standing alone in the middle of the dissolving crowd. No one was approaching them. No one was calling them grounded or generous. They were radioactive. Marla was weeping silently, her mascara running down her face in black rivulets. Grant was staring at nothing, his face gray. I felt a sudden, sharp pang of pity, not regret, just pity. They had wanted this so badly. They had traded everything for it, and now they had nothing. I didn't go to them. There was nothing I could say that wouldn't sound like "I told you so," and I didn't want that victory. I turned and walked toward the door. I passed Sloane Price on the way out. She was on her phone, screaming at someone in her office. "Kill the brand," I heard her say. "Dump the contract. We disavow. Blame the client. Say they misled us. Do it now." She looked at me as I passed. There was no hate in her eyes anymore, just calculation. She was already moving on to the next host, the next cleanup, the next lie. I walked out of the conservatory. The night air was freezing. It hit my face like a slap, waking me up. I took a deep breath. It smelled of snow and exhaust. Not orchids and ozone. It smelled real. I buttoned my coat and started walking toward the main road to catch a cab. The conservatory glowed behind me, a beautiful, shining lie against the dark sky. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I stopped under a street lamp and pulled it out. It was a text from Marla. "Come home tomorrow. We need to talk." I stared at the words, "Come home." It was the invitation I had wanted for 5 years. But now, looking at it, I realized that home wasn't a place they could give me. It wasn't a house with a perfectly manicured lawn. Home was the truth, and I was standing in it. I didn't type a reply. I didn't delete the message. I just slid the phone back into my pocket. Maybe I would go tomorrow. Maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I would help them pick up the pieces. Or maybe I would let them learn how to sweep up their own glass. But I wasn't going to decide tonight. Tonight, I was going to order a pizza. I was going to call Owen, and I was going to sleep without dreaming of orchids. I turned my back on the glowing glass cage and walked into the dark. Quiet city. The story wasn't over. But my part in their script was done. Thank you for listening to this story. It was a journey into the cracks beneath a perfect surface, and I hope it resonated with you. I would love to hear your thoughts. Where are you listening from? Have you ever felt like you had to edit yourself to fit into a family or a group? Please share your experiences in the comments below. I read every single one, and if you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories. We have many more tales of justice, truth, and the complex human heart coming your way. Until next time, stay real.